Okay, now we've looked at conditional rules quite a bit. If A, then B, this type of rule. And we've looked at some inferences for these rules. So if we had this rule, if A, then B, and we knew that we have A is true, well then we know we can infer B as well. That's our modus ponens inference. And then we also know that if we have this rule and then we get the additional information that B is not true, does not occur, does not happen, what have you, well then you can infer not A as well. Sorry, not A. So say we had this rule, another conditional here in more plain language, if you skateboard every day, then you'll improve quickly, meaning you'll improve quickly at skateboarding. So if you skateboard every day, you'll improve quickly. And then if we are told that it's true you skateboard every day, well then we could infer via modus ponens that you'll improve quickly. As far as doing a modus tollens inference with this, if we are told that you're not improving quickly, well, we could infer that you're not skateboarding every day. Assuming this rule was true, those inferences would work out. Now, I want to take a look at this rule and try and give you a little bit deeper understanding of it and how to manipulate it. We're going to look at a different way of saying these same rules, and that's called a contrapositive. An implication of this rule, if you skateboard every day, then you will improve quickly, is that if you don't improve quickly, you're not skateboarding every day, right? That's the same exact rule, just stated differently. And we call that different way of stating it the contrapositive. So here's the original rule up here. If you skateboard every day, then you'll improve quickly. If we want to restate that rule in a different way, we end up with this. And this would be the contrapositive of this original statement. So this is the original statement, and this is the contrapositive of that statement. Now, it works in reverse, too. This statement up here is the contrapositive of this one down here. So contrapositives, and I want to emphasize this right away, are always a pair. You have one that's the contrapositive of the other, and the other one is the contrapositive of that. So they occur in a pair. You can never look at a single statement by itself in isolation and say, that's a contrapositive. It would always have to be the contrapositive of something else. So how do we make this contrapositive? The contrapositive is made by taking the necessary condition and the sufficient condition. So here we have the sufficient, and here we have the necessary, and then you flip them around, so do a flip-flop, and then negate both. So here we see what used to be the necessary condition, but it's negated, and then here we see what used to be the sufficient condition, it's now the necessary condition, and it's negated. Note, of course, I want to be clear that in this new statement, this is still the sufficient condition, right? But it's now a negative condition, and this is now the necessary condition. But what we did was we flipped them around and then negated. So you always flip and negate to make a contrapositive. Now, when you're negating, say you start with a negative condition, to negate negative conditions is very simple. It's just like math. You make them positive. Right? The negative of a negative is a positive, so to speak. So if you're starting with this contrapositive, so if you're starting with this as your original statement, it has two negative conditions. If we want to make the contrapositive of this, we just take our sufficient condition, and then we take our necessary condition, and then we flip them around, and then negate. So we make them positive, and we end up back with that original statement that we had. This, again, is the contrapositive of this, and vice versa. So whenever you see a negative condition, and you're flipping to make the contrapositive, you just make that positive. Say you had the rule, if A, then not B. You want to make the contrapositive of that. You make that B positive, flip it over the arrow, and then make the A negative. Always negate both. If you don't, then you're going to end up with an incorrect inference that is not valid. That's something we'll talk about in a few lessons, but always remember to do it right. Flip and negate both terms. Make positives negative and make negatives positive. Now, when we make a contrapositive, we have the exact same rule. I'll prove that down in the text lesson. So you might be wondering, why do this at all? Well, in a lesson or two, we're going to see that often we're going to want to link up various conditionals to each other. And in that context, making the contrapositive is really helpful. Say you have a rule, A then B, and then another rule, not C then not B. Well, right now, it doesn't really look like those are related to each other at all. But say I take the contrapositive of this second rule and change it to B, then C, well, now they share a term, B, right here. And in a couple lessons, we're going to see how that means you can link them up. So make sure you give the text lesson a quick read here. Learn very carefully about contrapositives because you're going to be using them over and over again. And just remember, a contrapositive is a different way of phrasing the same rule that you make by flipping the sufficient and the necessary condition and negating each term.